Welcome, and a third welcome. rebelnews.com/live streams, the daily live streams. We are here. I am Andrew. That is Sydney in an airplane bathroom coming to you live. Do we have the same glasses, Sid? Is that what's going on here?
They're getting pretty close. A little too close for comfort, Andrew. You might have to switch them.
Oh, I'll just switch them with you, and then we'll switch them back. Same sort of thing. If you guys want the latest stream that we're using on the preferred website, like we said, rebelnews.com/live streams, whether it's on Rumble, Odyssey, or Getter, we're doing it live there, or on YouTube as well. And if you want to interact with us, you can always use the chat function on YouTube, but we are, of course, demonetized on all YouTube channels because, you know, I'll blame Mark Zuckerberg even on YouTube. It's Susan Wojcicki, I believe, is the person to blame there. So if you want to send us a note, a chat, a joke, a limerick, maps and directions to Sid's house, you can do so with a Rumble rant and a Odyssey hyper chat. Basically, you pay, and the more you pay, the more characters or letters you can use in your message, and we will read them on the air. Sydney, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Just got back from Medicine Hat myself, and what about you?
I've got back from Medicine Hat, never. I'm going to say, I've never been there. You want to tell everybody what you were doing there? A big story breaking in the last couple days?
Yeah, well, me and Mocha went down as soon as we heard that Tamara Lich was arrested, and we got there that night of the day that we found out. We were there the day after, and then, of course, we came back yesterday. So while we were there, we saw that there was protests that were taking place outside the local remand center, and we spoke to the MLA and the former MP about it. We also dropped off our petition, freetamara.ca petition, where people have been signing to free Tamara Lich. We dropped that off at the Medicine Hat police station because, of course, those were the guys who pulled her in, who put the cuffs on her. So that's what we were up to.
So what did she do that was a breach of her bail conditions?
Well, so far as I understand it, it's allegedly because there was a photo taken of her at a Freedom Award ceremony, and the photo was of her and another one of the convoy organizers, and there's an odd mix of conditions and everything that she had to sign off on before she was released, so it all revolves around that and this web that they've caught her in.
Taking a group photo with some of these people. Now, it's very strange. We've seen before that they don't want a lot of people involved in these protests to be speaking on the internet or gathering together. I guess if you think that they're hardened criminals, which I guess the Crown does, you don't want them conspiring with other people for other freedom protests. So it's hard to say. On one hand, you have to be like, if she knew the bail conditions and she shouldn't have broken them. But on the other hand, you have to say, well, what if the bail conditions are completely asinine and stupid and against your rights, or maybe they don't even make sense, maybe they're hard to figure out. So there's so many things going on there, and I'm glad you guys went to go cover that. How long of a trip is it from where you guys are in Calgary over to Medicine Hat?
It's about a 3-hour drive, and the whole drive is just farmland on farmland on farmland. So it's a little bit redundant, but it's quite the beautiful scenery.
Well, there's that old joke, Canadian joke, I forget the guy's name, who used to say, the Midwest of Canada is so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. That's it's a dad joke I'll throw out there. Apparently didn't go over with the Sid audience, you know. So what do you I want you to make a couple predictions here, Sid. I know that you're the reporter here, and you're very good at keeping your personal opinion out of your stories, but what do you think's going to happen here? Do you think that they're going to, you know, basically e-stalk her and make sure she's not doing anything like they've done to people in the past, whether it be Pastor Arter or even like to the effect of Chris Sky? Do you think that she eventually beats these charges, or do you think we see more of the same where these judges, for the most part across the country, continue to put the hammer down for, you know, COVID restrictions and, you know, protest violations as in relation to the protests?
Yeah, well, I think the long arm of the law is still going to be going after a lot of these individuals. But I should preface, during the time of the convoy, the truckers were off to Ottawa, but I actually went down to Coutts, and I spent most of my time during the convoy and the events of Ottawa in Coutts. So for myself as well, I'm kind of going back through the history of events to catch up on things, because there was a lot that went on. But when you go back and you see what happened in Ottawa, I mean, what are the police really trying to stop here? Are they trying to stop bouncy castles from evolving? It seems like it's being blown out of proportion.
It usually is, and that's why so many people across the, well, I'm going to say mostly just in America have a problem with it when you talk about massive populations who are looking at us and seeing what the hell's going on there. And now we have the stuff coming out from Ottawa because I guess people plan on being there for Canada Day, which is a completely normal thing. Every single year there's a massive presence. We usually send David Menzies there to just ask regular questions, but now it's all about protests because of what's happening in our country. And the Ottawa police, we read on the live stream yesterday, they were asked a question that if you see any hateful messages along with crimes, but also not with crimes, will you do anything about them? Will you accept them? And the chief of police is like, no. But also now we have the chief of police saying they will not accept any unlawful behavior, which makes sense, I guess, and we will not allow vehicle-based demonstrations in the motor vehicle control zone. So I guess protesting while inside of a vehicle is now illegal. I mean, they made it illegal during the last thing, but now, like, they have to be specific. Vehicle-based, vehicle-based demonstrations is a new term I'm not familiar with, Sid.
In the motor vehicle control zone, which is interesting. I wonder exactly how big that zone is. But, touching on that, I can mention in Calgary we had an injunction that was limiting people from honking. And I could just imagine, at what point is a honk just a honk, and all of a sudden now it's a form of political protest. It's a very interesting thing. And of course we all kind of saw the evolution of that. Honk honk, that's the response. But at the end of the day, somebody honking their vehicle has now been turned into justifications for perhaps arrest, but most specifically ticketing. And that's, at least I could say that's un-Canadian.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a point where when Japanese cars are shipped here, they're going to have the honking mechanism taken out of it for the Canadian models.
It'll just be, sorry, that'll be the horn.
Or just, Justin Trudeau or something, like a picture of him pop up, maybe in blackface. I don't know. I never said that. CBC article, trusted news source that we all know and love with over $1 billion. I wonder, though, Sid, and I'm reminding myself by mentioning over $1 billion, that they got the $1.7 billion as a push forward for funds that they would have gotten from Olympic coverage, and they were going to pay it back. I wonder if they paid any of it back yet. I believe the Olympics happened and nobody really cared. But I'm wondering if the CBC is going to pay back that extra like $700 million they got in ad revenue losses to the government of Canada. Send everybody a nice little check, whether it be, I don't know, $20 or whatever it's going to be. It'd still be a nice gesture, but I kind of get the feeling that they're not going to pay it back. They have this new article about MPs recommending that we do more to cover the extremism. What amazing timing. It's almost as if they're run by the government. Elizabeth Thompson, some old lady nobody's ever heard of. Do more to counter violent extremism in Canada, MPs recommend. Committee acknowledged there are issues surrounding any move to limit free speech. Let's scroll down, and of course they're using the Proud Boys as their example here, a group that's been labeled a terrorist group for at least a year now, I believe. So they haven't had any demonstrations that I can think of, but we're still using them as the example to denigrate truckers and people who are protesting in freedom movements, even though they're not involved whatsoever. The federal government has more to do to counter the threat of ideologically motivated violent extremism in Canada, including, and this is the woman's opinion, she's not quoting from anything, including strengthening terrorist financing laws to counter it, the House of Commons Public Safety Committee has recommended. In a report tabled before the House of Commons rose for the summer, which of course means their summer break, which they're supposed to go to their constituencies and hear from their people, which of course they don't. The committee also recommended the federal government work with provinces to prevent what it describes as a rising threat in Canada and to take steps to hold online companies more accountable for extremist or hateful content circulating on their platforms. However, they also acknowledged there are issues surrounding any move to limit free speech. See, this is... Well, I'll read the quote before I say what I was going to say. Each member of the committee is sensitive to the charter issues that are implicated in responding to the threat of ideologically motivated violent extremism. IMVE, we're going to hear that a lot from now on, I feel like. The committee wrote, any limitations on freedom of expression must be reasonable and justified in a free and democratic society. Sid, that sounds like doublespeak to me. Any restrictions on your speech must be reasonable.
Yeah, well, and this whole article kind of just makes me think about GoFundMe and the situation that happened there with the can I call it the stealing of millions of dollars or the acquisition of millions of dollars? The seizure, yeah, whatever fancy words they want to say. And as well, it reminds me of the individual in Winnipeg when there was, I believe it was a rally or something that was happening outside their legislature. I forget the exact details, but it was the individual who drove over some of the protesters, actually hitting a few individuals, an extremist left individual who clearly was violent in his approach, and I doubt they're going to say anything about that. There's a certain intention behind these thoughts that they're putting out there, and it's not towards violent extremism, as you would think, but more specifically directed approaches that aren't in alignment with the government.
Yeah, I've been warning people for weeks now as we look at people passing Matthew McConaughey wants red flag laws in the United States, and of course, we're way beyond that here. But when we look at limitations to free speech here, it's going to depend on who's in charge. So if you're, this lady writing this article, and you're all for this, which I'm sure she is, or else she probably wouldn't have come out of a cave to write it for the government. She's not going to like it if Pierre Poilievre or Maxime Bernier is in charge, and they're the ones determining who gets to speak and what's reasonable limits of free speech. That's why the American Constitution and the Founding Fathers decided nobody gets to decide what is free speech and what isn't, and what's hate speech. But in Canada, our British forefathers decided, you know what, the government still gets to decide, and just like everything else in our Charter of Rights, if the government says, hey, Sid, it's kind of dangerous out there, 0.01% of people have something and something's happening to them, well, we're just going to take away your rights. That's pretty reasonable, we think, if we want to shut down your business. So just think about the things that happened the last 2 years, what the government said was reasonable, what King Doug Ford said was reasonable, which is closing down everything but Walmart and any place he can get, Philly cheesesteaks from. And compare that to the complete opposite person and what they would decide is reasonable, and you'll get your answer somewhere in between. And I think the answer should be nobody should be able to get to decide that when they're in government power. But that's the MPs of Canada coming to our rescue again, Sid. And the Rcmp is our next story. It's just a wonderful, wonderful body that just wants to hold you close at night. You specifically, Sid.
Yeah.
Wants to hold you close. And while they're holding you, Sid, they're going to, you're going to fall asleep in their arms, and then they're going to put your thumb on your phone and open it, and they're going to read your messages. And they're just going to read it and see if you've done anything wrong, if you've been cheating on them, if you've been sending any emails that you haven't been sending, and maybe they'll turn on your webcam or listen to your phone. So this is a new report from my guy Cosman at True North. He was on my show last week. Check that out. And this is a scary one. Writer Doug said, isn't that messed up, Andrew, when he read this to me? RCMP reveals spyware capable of tapping into phones and webcams. And you're going to think, of course, we always think of the other side of the story here, so maybe it's just people who are convicted pedophiles. Maybe it's people who are terrorists. Maybe that's the people they're looking into. But of course, you'd be a liar and a fool if you said that, Sydney, wouldn't you? The RCMP has admitted to using spyware and other questionable methods to hack into phones and other electronic devices. Malware and other hacking methods were only used in extreme circumstances, they said, when other options proved ineffective, the National Policing Force affirms. According to the RCMP, he used these methods in 10 investigations upwards of 4 years ago, 2018 to 2020. Quote, this is a kind of capability that they have done everything possible to keep incredibly quiet. End quote, a senior researcher at U of T's Citizen Lab, Christopher Parsons, told Politico. Oh, somebody at U of T doing good work. That's a surprising one. This is a remarkable finding. For the first time, publicly reveals that the RCMP is using spyware to infiltrate mobile devices. Now, I believe there's a part in this article, Sid, where they talk about it's people committing possible crimes. This is what I read yesterday. It's not people convicted of anything. It's possible crimes. So, what do you got going on behind you? There's a little person opening a door and closing it.
Yeah, there's our chief videographer is crawling behind the camera.
Very subtle.
Yeah, but on that article, I just want to mention, and this isn't evidence of anything or nothing like that. But when I was in Coutts, a lot of the people I would talk to while we were all down there, there's the police barrier basically separating us from the rest of the world. a lot of us were having phone issues, whether it was being slow or there was calls that were dropping in weird ways. And I remember at one point, and again, this isn't evidence of anything, but late in the day, one of the days that I was there, I was on my phone searching some stuff up on the internet, and I just remember it was painfully slow. It was well slower than anything I'd experienced. And I literally typed into Google, like, guys, WTF, just leave me alone, I'm trying to go to bed. And then my phone all of a sudden got faster, and that is complete speculation. There's no evidence of anything there. But a lot of people in Coots during the blockade were thinking there's something weird with my phone. So I'm not surprised whatsoever by this revealing.
Well, you may or may not know that some militaries in the Western world have cell phone jamming technology. I don't know how anyone would know about that, but let's just say some people might know about that. But yeah, it's scary to think. Now, they do this in the U.S., and I'm gonna start sounding like everything's better in the U.S. because most of the time it is, but obviously it's terrible in different ways, and in some ways the same. But when they do this thing, it's not a secret that the government can do this. It's not a secret that they have backdoors into Apple and Android. We learned this in 2017, leaks from the CIA. I believe they were called Vault 7, Sydney, if you recall back in the Dizzy. But anyways, they can get into the phones for criminal purposes, of course. They want to stop bad people from doing bad things, but they're not supposed to be able to, when they wiretap you, they're not supposed to know who it is. So they go through this whole thing called the unmasking process, and I wonder if we have the same thing here in Canada, because that was sort of the thing where they listened into Trump, and they tried to, well, they got Michael Flynn fired, but they had the what's her name, meet with the Clintons on the airplane and find out and do the unmasking, and they found out who the people were that way. So it's supposed to be like Citizen 1 and Citizen 2, and you have to go through this court process to get the names unmasked, which of course I'm sure by now in 2022 would just be leaked to the press magically. So I'm wondering what the protocols are in Canada, and that might be worth a follow-up in the near future as to what the process is.
Actually, one thing I want to touch on, what is it, Vault 7 that you brought up? And this is going back a little bit, so I'm a little vague, but was that the situation where, was it the CIA or something like that? They had stored all of their malware and hacking software on a server that they didn't leave a lock on, basically, so there was backdoor access for everybody. Was that the same situation?
It was CIA documents. I don't recall the exact way in which it was leaked, but they had like a chart which basically showed which phone carriers they had access into the back of, and it was like all of them. and it was done for them by the companies in agreement with the federal government, of course. I'm guessing NSA and CIA, and they just had these backdoors into iPhones, and that was the same one where they said that, your your Samsung Smart TV has a camera in it, and it can watch you and listen to you. And Xbox 360 has the capability to have an infrared scan of your home, which was a fun thing to learn. So all this stuff that came out.
And on top of that, I'm referencing Tim Pool here. And I remember one of the shows that he did where they talked about, and they showcased that Facebook knows when you poop. They're collecting all sorts of information, and the more information they can get, the better. So if they can track you basically using sensor motions or infrared, anything, any of that information that they have on you, they're going to use, no matter what. And they want more and more information.
Well, if you think about when would Justin Trudeau or the powers that be say, let's use this capability we have to listen to people, it would probably be during the trucker protest, but we don't know that for sure. So we can only speculate with our personal opinions without lawyers right now.
This is very true.
And we digress. Staying on Canadian news, Air Canada is just doing a great job, I think we can all agree, in sucking. Former NHL player Ray Whitney, I believe, or is it Ryan Whitney? I think it was Ryan Whitney. Yeah, Ray Whitney's the much older one. He had that viral video that basically changed policy in Canada, being at the airport, talking about how long he was there and how it took him hours and hours, and our own writer extraordinaire, advertising, marketing guru Alex had the similar experience recently, he said, in the airport for an extra 6 hours. There's the video I'm talking about. But basically, what's happening is Air Canada is going through, and Toronto Airport's going through this phase where everything's jammed up because they're still trying to check everybody, and the federal government's like, please keep using this app, you guys. It's the only way for freedom. And now, tourism's down because we're the only country where you still have to, be vaccinated to come in, and even Canadians coming
quarantines.
back. Yeah, exactly. We're the only people who want to do this, of course, except for, I believe it's China and North Korea, which can argue are for similar reasons at this point. And now they're reducing flights amid customer service shortfalls. Now, if you're a David Menzies viewer, you'll know that the actual amount of people at the airport, specifically in Toronto, is reduced to below pre-pandemic levels. So even in early 2020, they don't have as many people in the airport now as they did before. So their staff shortages is sort of like an excuse here where they may be short on some staff, but they're way shorter on people, so they should still be able to handle it. I think it's obvious, Sydney, and you've been flying around since... Have you flown since the
lifting?
Yeah.
No.
No, okay. That was somebody else then. That was Mocha sneaking around, I guess. But I think it's obvious to suggest that the restrictions that are still in place are the things that are backing everything up and requiring that extra workforce that otherwise wouldn't be needed for this smaller amount of people. Do you agree, disagree, other opinion?
Well, yeah, the excessive mandates and guidances and rules that they have to abide by that are given to them by the government is kind of what's causing a fair amount of this backlog. Is that a fair statement, you think?
Well, I want to read some of this article and see if they have... here's what I like to do, Sid, and I know we haven't done this show together, and I love you very much, but what I like to do is I like to pretend like I'm completely moronic, more so, and say, well, there's got to be a great reason why they're doing this. And then we get one or two clicks deep and we realize it's for, equity or something. Air Canada is planning to reduce flights in July and August, according to a statement from the company's president, as the airline continues to deal with, quote, customer service shortfalls. They need some AI in there. Regrettably, things are not business as usual in our industry globally. Globally, you guys, totally not just us. And this is affecting our operations and our ability to serve you with our normal standards of care. End quote from Michael Russo. The airline will be reducing its capacity as summer travel comes to a peak. Now, those things sort of contradict. Summer travel comes to a peak, reduce our capacity. The pandemic-related restrictions on travel continue to lift. In an email statement to CTV News Channel, an Air Canada spokesperson said, we're reducing an average number of 154 flights per day for July and August. Prior to this change, Air Canada was operating around 1,000 flights per day. Excuse me. That's almost 10 times less, Sydney. What's going on here?
It is really tough to say. I mean, honestly, if I was to speculate, I think this is all part of the net zero by 2050 kind of goal. I think I've heard of headlines where in the UK, they were trying to reduce air flights and the amount of expenditures that went into facilitating the airline industry. So I think this is kind of a long run at net zero where, of course, airplanes cost fuel, and why would we want more people flying? And especially another thing, during the time of the pandemic, everybody was kind of locked up in their own region, whether you were locked in your home, your city, or your province. You weren't able to go to, a lot of people, let's say, weren't able to go to Winnipeg or weren't able to go to Quebec, and they weren't able to see the differences in how the government was facilitating this whole COVID preparation and the COVID enforcement. So I think that's another thing that they want to reduce, is the amount of travel that takes place, so that we don't have any examples of what life could be like in another place or what life already is like in another place.
That sounds very existential of you, Sydney. What life could be like in another place. Let's go ahead and throw to one of our Rebel News ads here as I slowly recover from, monkeypox that I've had the last couple of days. I don't want to cough on air. Let's throw to a commercial here for Infowars.com.
When it was first published in 2016,
they're going to believe that.
The fourth industrial revolution made the case that technology and digitization will revolutionize everything.
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
Making the overused and often ill-used adage, this time is different. Simply put, major technology innovations are on the brink of fueling momentous change throughout the world. In the 4 short years since, technology progressed and moved impressively fast. AI is now all around us, from drones and voice recognition to virtual assistants and translation software.
Where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Our mobile devices have become a permanent and integral part of our personal and professional lives, helping us on many different fronts, anticipations, our needs, listening to us and locating us, even when asked not to do so.
That's like so absurdly good. Like, I can't believe you hate that. Like, it's so good. This guy's voice is really just charming me. You know, it's in line what we're talking about a bit today. It's really creepy. And people have been talking about the carbon tracker for I think like 2 years now, and like they're really doing it, Sid. They're really just trying to like take over the world and like be like, you can't do anything without us tracking you.
Yeah, well, you're going to have your carbon visa soon, and every time you buy a bag of potato chips, let's say, it's going to be a little measurement of how much carbon it took for you to buy that and for it to be produced and all that jazz. And then, you know, maybe you buy 100 bags of potato chips for a party that you want to go to, and then all of a sudden you find out that you can't afford gas because they won't let you pay for gas because you've already hit your carbon cap.
Well, not unlike what Aaron O'Toole wanted. I believe they already have the type of credit card in use. It might be MasterCard because they're a huge part of the WEF. In Europe carbon footprint credit card, and I think we'll be able to find. I believe it's already in use.
Yeah.
Did we find it?
There it is.
There it is. Like the last 2 days, Sid. I'm just on fire. How do we read this? Can we full screen? MasterCard is global payment technology. Yes. Blah blah blah. Do we have anything in here about the carbon footprint thing? Is what I'm specifically looking for. Let's find that. Carbon footprint. Or,
as well, while we're looking for that, in the meantime, I should just mention, you know, there's all this new technology that's being revealed to us, and, you know, day by day it's getting faster and faster. But I think a lot of people forget, and this is kind of a rule of thumb that I stick to, is whatever technology is currently visible to the public, the military is 20 years ahead of us. The military is always 20 years ahead of us, because if they don't have that advantage, then the regular society, open society, regular people are going to have the exact same tools as the military, and that can't happen for them to have an advantage.
Of course, and I don't know if you're remember the show called Future Weapons. That was like 2003, I want to say. And back then they were showing stuff like recoilless rifles and autonomous artillery, a briefcase that shot a lightning bolt out of it, all this stuff, and that was early 2000s, and some of that stuff did come out, and like you're exactly right in your sentiment there. We found the credit card. Magician Olivia found it, and it's World Economic Forum, of course. And this is 2019. Jeez. Yeah. Scroll down a bit. See, so they're basically showing you how they're going to track you: drinks, snacks, sugar, oils, spreads, vegetables, cereals, breads, dairy, chicken, fish, pork, beef, and lamb. So, yeah, go ahead.
When are they going to add how much we exhale to this chart?
Well, they do for the cows.
They do for the cows, but when's it going to come to us? It's only a matter of time. I mean, every human exhales carbon dioxide, do they not?
That's a myth, Sydney. Let's scroll down and can we blow up some of that text down there and let's see what that says. Everything was in our shopping basket. Everything in we put in our shopping basket comes at an environmental cost. And while many of us are aware that we need to reduce our carbon footprint, we should just force you to do it. Advice on doing so can seem nebulous, and keeping a tab is difficult. Tapping into that problem, Swedish fintech, it's always the Swedes. Deconomy has launched a new credit card that monitors the carbon footprint of its customers and cuts off their spending when they hit their carbon max. So they tested on the Swedes, and then they put it for the rest of the world. Track CO2 emissions linked to purchases to calculate the carbon impact of every transaction.
Well, in Northern Europe... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, like, it requires a lot of cooperation for businesses because you're stopping people from making money when you're just being like, the consumer cannot buy things from you now. And that takes a lot of cooperation, but how, like, I'm trying to map out in my brain here how that still goes. Like, I guess if there's one company and it's like just Amazon, they're not going to be hurt. They'd rather the control, you know what I mean?
Well, one thing this makes me think of is when I was recently at the Global Energy Show. And the odd thing I noticed is, there's all these great ideas, new innovations, and even new innovations that are quite interesting in green energy and this and that. And they call it green energy, but really it's just an alternative to oil. But the thing is, and we're approaching this energy transition phase, as those in the industry would call it, where we're supposed to be going towards greener resources, using hydrogen. But at the end of the day, it's all kind of just rinse and repeat. And the people who are facilitating this growth, like the on-the-ground technology and advancements there, they're just doing it because it feels like the industry itself is moving in that direction. It's not an accounting of the science behind these decisions. It's just an accounting of where the industry is looking like it's going to go.
Well, whether it's the WEF or China or somebody, whomever you want to label as in charge, at some point in the last couple of years or a couple of years back, they realized that you don't even need to really put in forceful laws in place for people to fall in line. You just need pressure from corporations that influence culture. And we saw that with COVID laws. We saw that with masking, where even outside, people who don't have to wear them, they just feel like they have to do it. Vaccines, everything else. So you can see with Pride advertising, Pride Month, or drag queens. If enough people who produce enough income are saying it, then we got to get on board too. There doesn't have to be a law in place. There doesn't have to be a penalty for not doing it. You don't have, like, the NBA doesn't have to have a pride flag anywhere. They're not going to get sued if they don't. But they all still do it, and it's all corporate pressure, and they don't even actually, like, it's a willingness to succumb to the powers that be, and like a willingness to be some sort of economic slave, and they don't even really have to do anything besides say something and push it through the media. And then when you've already done that, that's when they slide things under the door that are way more sinister, and they're just like, oh, well, we're just pushing towards green energy, you're going to be poor for a while. There's no law that says, like, we can't do this, so, gas prices are going up, it's Putin's fault, sorry everybody. And nobody does anything about it, especially not in our country, Sid. And it's gotten to this point where I watched the thing like the Great Reset trailer there, and it's like, this seems inevitable at this point, and maybe that's the point, I guess. They've broken me, Sydney.
Well, it's inevitable to the degree that there are people working on these agendas, and those people will continue to work on those agendas. However, as we saw with the convoy, and I just want to make that point, is think about how bad things would be in Canada now if there was zero pushback over the last 2 years. And that's the thing, is those individuals have their agenda, and it's a matter of, well, for most of us Canadians who say, well, my agenda is different than that. I want to live in Canada. I want to be able to hug my family members. We have a different agenda, and we're going to strive for that agenda. They can strive for their agenda, and we're going to see who wins.
You'll hug through your plastic sheet and you'll like it, Sid.
That's right. Yeah.
I want to go to some bug eating, but let's get to some of these paid chats first. It better be about how handsome Sydney is. Oh, we're not ready yet, I'm told. Unbelievable. No,
well, in that case, I think there's a story about Putin. Maybe we can throw that one up.
We have another one about the ground meats, though.
Oh, yeah, let's do
This is
that.
very in line with what we're talking about, because, Sydney, and maybe in 2015, I'd just be like, oh, maybe these meat companies just don't want you to be turned off by their product. But 2022, Andrew says, the reason why they don't want to label ground meats with warning labels is so that they can grind up bugs and stuff and say, hey, this is the same meat as everything else. And this latest article regarding Health Canada saying ground meats will not require a warning label in reversal of initial opinion is very interesting, because when we scroll down to the article, we can see that they said they decided they're only going to label meat as they're only going to have one label for it. In a press conference, Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos announced that it's a long-awaited policy which will require labels on foods that are higher in sugar, salt, or saturated fat will come into effect January 2026. We can wait 4 years before we start warning people about sugar and salts and fats. And following weeks of mounting concerns for the meat industry, Ottawa's plan to announce Thursday Ottawa's plan announced Thursday marks a reversal on its initial position that would require such labels on ground meats. There are some proposals to distinguish between the two, said Mr. Duclos on Thursday morning, referring to the ground and whole meats. But in the end, for clarity and avoiding all sorts of confusion, it's just for clarity, Sydney. And to treat the two types of meat equally, that being ground and whole meats, we ended up with this result, which I believe will result in both farmers and consumers will appreciate. So why, in 2022, Sydney, after the world's largest cricket meat plant was built in Ontario, would we just not care about differentiating between ground meats and whole meats?
Well, I think the differentiation between ground meats and whole meats is valuable. But I don't think it's something you need a label on the package. I know what a steak looks like, and I know what ground meat looks like.
Well,
if
you know what a bug
stupid,
steak looks like.
That I am terrified of, to be honest.
That's right,
not only are there the bugs, but as Kian mentioned to me, they're trying to make meat out of air, and they're also using a variety of bacteria. Yeah. But really, they're just using a variety of bacteria and turning it into something that they would call edible, and they call it meat when it's not. It's like a vegan egg. It's not an egg. It's not a real thing, but they choose these labels because they want to replace the natural things that we enjoy, like a good hearty steak.
Wow, I can't believe you would become such a shill for big beef like that, Sydney. What's this Putin story you spoke of?
What was it, Shirtless man and the Shirtless competition?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, which I think is kind of ridiculous in and of itself. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen the Vladimir Putin shirtless riding a bear, memes and stuff like that. Or here it is. So Vladimir Putin says Western leaders would look disgusting shirtless. What do you take of that?
Well, everybody but Trudeau, baby.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, he's got it all hanging off of him. Boris Johnson, overweight. Angela Merkel, overweight. Maybe some South American prime ministers and presidents were probably in way better shape. I'd have to imagine they're thinner people. I don't recall the prime minister of Australia. If the prime minister of New Zealand had to disrobe, you would see her antenna, I believe, and her 4 sets of wings. I don't even know what that means. Go ahead.
And at the bottom of that article, actually, there's a little statement by Putin talking about alcohol, addiction, and family values. I don't know if we can pull that up really quickly. But on the mention of shirtless politicians, I mean, that's not a sight I don't think anyone really wants to see. But if it came down to it, I think it's more important who would win in a fight. If you put Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin in a room, I think it matters more who would win in a fight than it matters who would look better shirtless. Not that I'm supporting a fight between the two, but I think that's a better metric than who looks better shirtless. Either way, where is that quote here?
Right
so he noted that to look good, it's necessary to stop abusing alcohol and other bad habits, do physical exercise, and take part in sports. And I believe Putin has done those things. I believe he's dipped his toe into martial arts to some extent.
I think it was judo, yeah. But isn't this in response to an article that came out that said they were making fun of his photos, like the NATO leaders were mocking his photos? Yeah,
they were mocking his photos, but I think that point he makes at the end is pretty on point, I guess you could say. And as well, I think it's a slight jab at Trudeau, perhaps, considering the amount of alcohol he pursues while he's on private jets. So that's just why I wanted to touch on that.
Well, unfortunately, Sydney, I think you'd be remiss, and it would be difficult to find a world leader that could actually beat up Trudeau. He's the youngest one. He's still thin, and he can box, at least somewhat.
No, I call Putin on that. I think
Putin's like 70, though.
Judo, right?
That's
I
70.
Mess with that. I wouldn't mess with that.
Interesting. Place your
I would
bets,
take
everybody.
Trudeau. No, I wouldn't fight either of them. But if I had to be in a room with one of them, I'd take Trudeau. As unfortunate as that might be.
He'd take Trudeau. Quote him on that, everybody. That's where the quote starts and stops. What's this Biden story we have here? The one thing, we want to go to another ad break, and we want to prepare you for Joe Biden. I feel like that at this point we need that Alex Jones shot where it's like from 50 feet away and it's like the side angle, or the overhead shot where it just looks like where he's doing a lot of this, like this. This is what we've got coming up next. After the next break, we've got a full break coming up here. We're going to sell you our filters. Love you, Alex.
That's a great impersonation.
Thank you, Sydney. Yeah, we're going to come right back with a Joe Biden article. He really believes he's stabilizing the world, you guys.
Canada is not a dirty word. Canada is not a racist country. Canada is the true north, strong and free. This Canada Day, if you want to remind the Canadians who have forgotten what Canada is really about, go to rebelnewsstore.com and check out our new exclusive line for Canada Day, as well as our other gear for the patriots at home. You can even save when you use coupon code Canada25 on 2 items or more, and all purchases go to support our journalism here at Rebel News, which is completely independent from the government. Happy Canada Day.
Wow. Very bigoted commercials about Canada Day.
Well, I just want to shout out David Menzies. Happy Dominion Day.
That's
we
right.
Should be saying.
Wasn't it Trudeau's dad that basically forced it through? I don't know. There's no point in me even telling you the story, because I'm sure there's going to be 6 videos where David Menzies talks about the reason it's been changed. So Joe Biden has said the one thing that's been destabilizing the world is outrageous behavior from the Supreme Court. Destabilizing the world by rescinding the federal government's stranglehold on a very controversial topic that's pretty much 50-50 in the United States, and they've been destabilizing the world by doing this. Specifically by Roe v. Wade, Sydney?
Well, I got to be honest, and even from before Joe Biden got elected, I watched him basically from the start of his campaigning, and he's not the same person that he was even at the beginning of his campaigns, let alone 20 years ago. The man has lost his wits, and I don't say that to be insulting, but there should be serious concern about an individual like that leading a country. And of course, at the end of the day, he really isn't leading the country, because there are a multitude of people behind the scenes that are kind of pushing him in that direction, changing his diaper, leading him in this direction. And those are the people that really run the country right now, not Joe Biden.
Well, his rallies, as you recall, in the start of his campaign, his truck rallies, those would be illegal in Ottawa as vehicle-based demonstrations that I'm circling right now. So we got a video of him.
Actually, that's not true, because nobody showed up, if you remember.
They were in their cars. They were honking.
Yeah,
all illegal.
all 5 of them.
Yeah. Remember the ones with the circles? That was a good one, too. Let's play Joe Biden mumbling on CNN, shall we?
The one thing that has been destabilizing is the outrageous behavior of the Supreme Court of the United States in overruling not only Roe v. Wade, but essentially challenging the right to privacy.
Is that what
We've
that
been
is?
a leader in the world in terms of personal rights and privacy rights. And it is a mistake, in my view, for the Supreme Court to do what it did. The one thing that
Let me go to an international body and just crap all over my own Supreme Court for actually doing the opposite. They're going around, and every pundit and every politician right now going around acting like they don't know what the decision is, or they're just not smart enough to know what it is, or don't care to know what it is. They didn't take away any rights. First of all, show me any constitution anywhere in the world that was drawn up and written up that includes the right to abortion. Doesn't exist. Maybe Australia. Maybe Australia just did it last year or something. But that doesn't exist. So there's no actual right to that, which is my first problem. But all they did is make it so that people can actually decide. Roe v. Wade, based on a lie, is not it's not a real law. They pushed it through as a federal mandate saying that you can't restrict access to abortion. And now they're saying we were wrong, like that was a poor decision, so we're going to turn it back to the states. And where are all these heavy protests happening? In places that are going to have abortion anyways. I saw there's one in Arizona because their law is now dating back to 1901 or something, where it's anything but to save a mother's life. But what I don't understand, Sydney, is, and I think I've been saying this for 5 years, you're so vehemently for or against something, but you don't even care to look into what it actually means.
Yeah, well, and what does abortion mean? That is a long-standing argument, and of course there are 2 very strong opposing sides on that matter. And personally, I'm not the guy who's as versed as I need to be to tell you what the right thing is or anything else, but there's the two conversations. There's whether or not abortion is the right thing to do, and then whether or not abortion is legal. And I think you did highlight that in the beginning, but I think that's a conversation that people really need to get a hold of, because they're not unanimous. Whether or not it's legal and whether or not it's right are two different conversations. Perhaps they're supposed to be one conversation, but I'm not sure. It is a very complicated argument.
Well, what I was referring to specifically is the decision by the Supreme Court. I don't even, like, people are going to have their opinion on it, of course, and whether or not they consider it a murder. But to not even understand what the Supreme Court has done and to say they've taken away my rights and, they're taking away my access to abortion. Like, no, the Supreme Court isn't actually doing that. They are giving more localized governments the ability to decide for themselves. And they have these things called trigger laws, which meant as soon as that was taken away, it triggered the laws to go into effect, which in some states now is a total outright ban. And in some cases like California or New York, there's no rules at all, just like Canada. And people always bring up the same arguments about incest and rape and everything, which of course are a very small number of everything. Over 90% on almost every survey you can find is for convenience or no reason given, and then like another few percentages on economic reasoning. And you can my problem isn't even, again, necessarily what a person's opinion on actual abortions is their understanding of what the law is, and then secondarily the excuse making that comes with it, which is like pretending that it's actually all about, rights and fundamental freedoms, when in the end of the day, I think it's pretty obvious to most people that people want it as a backup form of contraception, and most of the people aren't willing to admit that. They can't articulate any other reason around it. And I watch these debate videos, and I watch college-age students try to justify their opinion, and it's just anger and yelling and no opinion at all. It's just, you agree with me or die, basically, is what it's come down to. And I'm sure you see a lot of that in a lot of protests that you've gone to, where Antifa was at, and it's I don't like you, Sydney, and if you don't agree with me, then please die, basically.
Well, and that's the thing, is the Supreme Court wasn't deciding whether or not abortion was right or wrong. It was deciding that, okay, I guess it would be called the case law surrounding Roe v. Wade, and the decision made there wasn't in line with the constitutional rights that it had said were involved. That's a fair assessment, I believe.
What it did was say that you could no longer restrict, it just made a federal blanket law that you could no longer restrict abortion access. So you have to provide it. There was term limits in some places or not, but you can't just restrict the access. You can't just say no abortions. You can't do anything lesser than what is recommended here. And all they're doing is giving it back to the states to decide, and many of these states have their own laws already in place, where Canada has virtually no laws in place. And I like to remind people of that Canada has no laws against anything.
Well, and the one good thing I think that came of this decision was the fact that it did reduce the amount of authority that the federal government had. And I think that is always a good thing. I don't think the government should have as much power as it's given itself to this day, and that includes in Canada.
I was speaking with friends last night, Sydney, and I want to get your opinion on this. That we've gone from this place over the last 5 or 6 years where it's been like, okay, you can call them conservatives or right wing. They're racist, sexist, all these homophobic people. And then there's gay conservatives. Well, those ones are sexist and racist. Oh, there's actually a lot of black and Hispanic conservatives. Well, all those people, this, that, and the other. And now we've gotten to the point where even though there's Hispanic women, black men, a black woman, etc. on the Supreme Court, we've gotten to the point where it's just like, it doesn't matter anymore. None of those identities actually mattered. We just hate you. And that's what I think the end goal here is when people, and I said this a lot more during the Ontario election, of how Doug Ford always reaching out and trying to be like, please, Liberals, love me. We're at the point where they don't like you. They want you in jail. They want to destroy your family, take away your rights, etc., your guns. These are the people that you're reasoning with. Now, of course, you need to hold yourself to a high standard, but we can't even recognize that, 6 months ago, it was all white men in shadowy places making these decisions, when the Supreme Court has a black man, a black woman, Hispanic woman, a white woman, 2 Hispanic men, and a couple more white men. We can't even acknowledge that anymore. It's just we've moved the goalpost so far that it's the width of a CFL football field.
Yeah, no, certainly. I'm not sure how much to add on that, but it is quite blown out of proportion. Sorry.
It's okay, Sydney. Forgive you for now. Do we have any pay chats to get to as we begin to wind down on time? I think I got a thumbs up. There we did. Adam Ottawa says, I won't be here for Canada today, so I'm sporting my red Maple Leaf honk honk shirt today while running errands. Thank you for purchasing, Adam. I wonder when t-shirts will be considered as hate speech. Flags are becoming contraband. I'm pretty sure if you have something hateful on your shirt in Canada, it is considered hate speech, and you probably be... Go ahead.
Oh, but hold on to it for 20 years just in case.
Yeah, just in case. Wonderful laws we have here, Sydney. Go ahead.
All these companies pulling sponsorship from Hockey Canada reminds me about the whole social governance in the ESG score and keeping companies in line, or companies line. What do you think about that?
That's I forget what it stands for, environmental, social, something else, but basically, if your company is not providing enough social justice or doing enough for the environment, they're scoring your company poorly, and that affects the credit of your company. So of course you want to go with companies with a high score for Xi Jinping, Chairman Mao, and all the other wonderful leaders of our past.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a way for government to just control the narrative being propagated by external companies that should have nothing to do with government.
It's true. Do you have any more there, Frasier? On the eve of Canada Day, aka Dominion Day, my memory of Canada Day on Parliament Hill. My daughter was performing with the Delta Youth Orchestra. Me too. We had free reign of Parliament on the grounds. My, how times have changed. Thank you to Trudeau Liberal dictators. Happy Dominion Day, aka Canada Day. Why, thank you. You know, on a cold summer's eve, Sydney can be seen playing a harp in the mountains of Alberta.
Or picking wild berries.
Picking wild berries. Many don't know, who maybe are fans of Rebel News, that Sidney Fazard, who sounds like he's an 80s rock star, is a hunter and gatherer. He likes to forage wild berries, crab apples, other types of...
Morels.
Of what, sorry?
Morels.
I don't even know.
It's called morels?
What's morels?
Like a mushroom that looks like a brain.
Oh, that's good, Sid. That's good. Picking up random mushrooms on the street. Could be grown from anything. They're expensive? Okay. We'll have to look that one up. That's going to be 3 carbon points, Sydney. Chris Pratt is turning a 180 out. Trini Canadian says, who has the better beard, Sid or Andrew? Well, Sid's is shaved right now. I wish we had that picture of you on hand.
I'm glad we don't.
I'll find it. Don't you worry. You look like one of the Bee Gees. I don't know if we're going to be able to find it, but it's a great photo.
I sure was unbuttoned a little too much, I think.
It's hashtag handsome Sid. Chris Pratt, who is a known Christian and one of the few outward Christians in Hollywood, I'll say, is I don't know what's going on here. I read this earlier. He says, I'm not a religious person. I doubt this, because he's given so many speeches that were so religious. It's fine if you're religious. Tons of people thank God for everything after winning something. I have no problem with that. But he went into excess, I'll call it. He went into lengthy terms about his faith in award ceremonies, and now he's saying he's not a religious person. I don't understand it. Go ahead.
Maybe I could ask. So he says he's not a religious person. Is it the difference between a religious person and a faithful person? Because I haven't really followed his story too much.
Because he was saying that he's not a fan of organized religion. He says they've done lots of stuff. What's the quote he has there? He was cursing. Religion has been oppressive as F for a long time, he said. I didn't know that I would become the face of religion when really I'm not a religious person. I think there's a distinction between religious, adhering to the customs created by man, oftentimes appropriated, that are reserved for who I am, I believe is a very real God, for who I believe is a very real God, and using it to control people, to take money from people, to abuse children, to steal land, to justify hatred, whatever it is. The evil that's in the heart of every single man is gloomed glued onto the back to the religion and come along for the ride, having trouble reading Hollywood Reporter's font. I don't know. Maybe that's a turn for the worse, Sydney. Maybe he's saying, like, listen, guys, I'm not actually that Christian. Social justice this, and oppression that, and land stealing this.
Well, he's already...
Yeah.
Oh, he's already gotten the boot a few times, right? I think, what was it, Guardians of the Galaxy, there was some issues there, and some other stuff he might have been canceled from, I'm not too sure, but I think he's already kind of faced it, now he's just like, whatever, I'm just going to say, whatever I'm going to say, and you can take it however you're going to take it.
Well, whenever people say things about, like, land stealing and everything, I just, like, wish they'd throw in, like, a little bit of a, which is happening today in this region. So, like, put yourself on a limb instead of just being, like, this extremely vague notion of something that people will say I'm a great person for. It's all virtue signaling, Sydney. And that's a new show, Virtue Signaling with Sydney. I'd watch it. I'd listen to it. Well, I try to sleep at night.
Might go south real quick.
It's going to be your version of Coast to Coast.
Yeah.
Watching the skies. I mean, I didn't even want to do this story, but I think we have a couple minutes. Jane Fonda suggesting we redefine vaginas as AK-47s. Like, what a moron, Sid. Like, first of all, Jane Fonda. Like, it's not 1978. Her opinion doesn't matter. Let me guess, before we read the article, guns have so many rights, we should just rename our vaginas after guns, and then maybe we'd get more rights, and maybe people would respect us. Bring it up. Jane Fonda suggests we redefine vaginas as AK-47s.
And does that mean that babies are bullets?
Yes. Fight like hell. If corporations can be defined as a person, why not redefine vaginas as AK-47s? That way we'd be free of government restrictions by those who care about the sanctity of life. Sydney, even in my 2 days of just being on fire here and predictions, it still doesn't make me happy, as you'd think, to be right about these sad people and being so predictable. And it's like, how do you go through life being so predictable? If I can not even see the title of the article, I have a caption here that was written by our producer as a summary, and I can predict a person's opinion based on that. There's a problem, I think. Yeah,
well, and I think a lot of what we're seeing too is there is the one narrative that they know is the okay narrative, and they'll jump on that every time. And especially the Hollywood elk and the people who abuse popular culture to exemplify themselves over a mission of, like, a religious person would use that for their faith, to extend their faith, whereas somebody who's a celebrity, let's say in celebrity status, they're not going to use it to propagate their faith necessarily. They also have that other avenue of follow the stream and get paid. So, I don't know.
Well, Sydney, you're very wise in your young age of 43.
The smarter you get, the more you know there is to learn. So I appreciate it.
All right, let's put that in the book. All right, son.
All right, sounds good.
Do we have any more chats before we go? Or should we have, I believe, one more? It's going to come up on the screen right here.
5, 4, 3. No, don't add too much.
There you go, Sid.
Have you folks ever thought of extending the live stream to 2 hours? More news than ever to talk about. Well, I mean, this is one of very few times that I'm on the live stream, so maybe I'll leave that for Andrew to mention.
Well, if you go on with David and Sheila, that usually goes, well, categorized as ridiculously long anyways. But the thing is that a lot of us have, like, Sid's going to leave here and go do a report or go edit a video. I'm going to go here and go mow the lawn, for example, or after I leave here. And half of our producers have second jobs. Like, this is how it is around here. This is what we don't take government money. So we have to, actually run a company. Whereas if we're on CBC, Sid, we're sitting here on $1 million set like they did in the last election, and they had holograms and everything, and it's 6 people you've never heard of with a quarter of the following of Sidney Fizzard, Coots famous on Twitter with his huge following, people that nobody ever heard of telling you crap you don't care about, and they're getting paid, $100,000 to $150,000 a year to ramble on and then do nothing else and just go home afterwards. Go ahead.
If my priority was sleeping, I'd join the CBC.
That's fair. I'm sure they probably have like a safe room, a nap room, and a variety of rooms, I'd imagine, that aren't actually for working. So we thank you for your suggestion. I mean, we have tons of content otherwise. That's the thing, too, is we have so many videos and so many reporters that come out that we want to make sure people are focused on that. But I think people are always open for more live streams. It's just the fact that it's, you can't just do it whenever you can. We have right now us two, Mocha, producer Mocha helping you, and 3 people in the back right now, at least, that I can't even see them. It's one of those one-way mirrors. They just mock me the whole time.
Well, maybe I can add, what was that Jim Carrey movie where he lives in this bubble or a dome? Are you familiar?
Truman Show?
Yeah, the Truman Show. Maybe we could set up a Rebel News Truman Show to get one of the interns just to stick it to the bubble 24 hours a day.
So we're going to kidnap a person from birth and put them in a reality show that they don't know they're in. And that's our new show, Sid? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, the world's getting crazier every day. Who knows?
And eat the bugs. Thank you, everybody, for watching rebelnews.com/live streams. Thank you for dealing with somewhat sick Andrew Says, even though I've been right about everything the last couple days. Thank you, Sydney Fazard, for all your hard work and your reporting. We're going to keep it locked on you. Is there a specific website for the Tamara Lich stories coming out right now?
FreeTamara.ca. I heard over 30,000 people now have signed that petition to free Tamara. Tamara Lich, of course, the convoy organizer, one of them. So if you want to help her out and you want to join the tens of thousands of people that agree that what's been going on with her is wrong, well, go to FreeTamara.ca, sign the petition, and join the thousands and thousands of people. 36,000 now, incredible. So join them, get us to 50,000, and let's drop that petition off so that Ottawa police, our Liberal government, our Conservative Party, let them all know what we all think about Tamara Lich and the arrest that she's going through.
And as soon as we get to 50,000, we're sending Sid by rickshaw because we want him to suffer for his art. And it's going to be a great video. But thanks a lot on the serious note, Sid, for traveling and covering these stories. rebelnews.com/live streams is where you get the daily stream and the best link to watch. Thank you for your paid chats. Thank you for your viewership. Go ahead and watch my show last week. I showed you the article from Cosmin. He was on the show. And thank you for anybody going and buying merch from rebelnewsstore.com. With all the new Canada Day stuff, you wouldn't want to disappoint Adam and Drea, would you? Have a nice day, everybody. Canada Day tomorrow. See you guys next week.
Yeah, enjoy the day off.
News doesn't take days off, Sydney.
Well, Canada Day is nearly upon us, and that glorious and free country, Canada, well, it's been under attack as of late by politicians like Justin Trudeau, who seem to be completely oblivious to accountability and to Canadian principles. One of the ways we can hold politicians accountable is by having strong, independent media that is willing to ask tough questions and tell the other side of the story. You can show your Canadian pride and support Rebel News by going to rebelnewsstore.com now, grabbing yourself some Canada Day swag, and representing Rebel News. Best of all, you can use the code CANADA25 to buy one item and get 25% off your next item. Again, rebelnewsstore.com.